Alfred Clark is a mysterious British writer who wrote at the very tail end of the 19th century. There are absolutely no records of his life available, and research is made even more difficult by references to US recorded music pioneer Alfred Clark cropping up when looking up the name. Clark's Sport in the Low Country of Ceylon mentions that he had spent the greater part of 25 years in the forests of the Low Country of Sri Lanka. He also wrote a treatise on Sri Lanka in the Peeps at Many Lands series, and that's about it for personal information. His debut, as far as the Victorian Research website can ascertain, was the 1891 A Dark Place of the Earth, a promising-sounding story of a shipwreck and of a, to quote, conflict between the surviving descendants of Dutch and Portuguese explorers on a volcanic island near Ceylon. The 1893 Woe to the Conquered deals with Rome at the time of the slave revolt led by Spartacus. In A State of Nature is yet another story dealing with descendants of Europeans, this time from Elizabethan England, surviving in a lost race capacity, specifically on an island in the Arctic Circle. It is a bit of an odd coincidence that the most well-remembered of Clark's novels, The Finding of Lot's Wife, is often mislabeled as Lost Race. Potentially the confusion comes from the fact that most of his other books were Lost Race. I myself have heard about the book via the Lost Race checklist on Jessica Amanda Salmonson's old, now defunct website, which makes this a fortunate error since I might never have come across the book at all. The Finding of Lot's Wife came out in 1896, and as far as I know, it is the only Clark novel republished since its initial publication. The story begins with a group of travelers making their way across the mountains of southern Palestine. The group consists of Hal Aylward of Berkshire, accompanied by his childhood friend, the artist Noel Yorke, a few servants, and an escort of armed Arabian guards. Aylward had just inherited some property from an uncle, and he immediately used it to satisfy his desire to go on a trip to the east. The pair had already spent months in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunis. However, as they were returning from the Dead Sea, they passed by the cliff monastery of Marsaba, whose inhabitants revealed to them the existence of a community of nude anchorites devoted to Saint Lot, their monastery situated atop an inaccessible rock in a distant valley. Supposedly, these people have acquired immunity from death due to their piety, eat food brought to them by ravens, and drink nothing but dew. Yorke wishes to go see the place, especially due to all the evil spirits which are supposed to be prowling about, seeking entry into the monastery. Aylward doesn't really want to go, but gives in the end. Unfortunately for them, their Arab guards flee at the first appearance of a group of desert Arabs, the Beni Azaleh, who themselves appear to be rather confused by the presence of people in such an empty wilderness. Upon the two groups meeting, the travellers consent to go and spend the night at the camp of the desert Arabs, where they meet their fierce, fanatical-seeming mullah Abdallah Abu Mansur. On asking him about the monastery, he very obviously lies that he knows nothing about nothing. Among the Beni Azaleh, the newcomers have an obvious enemy in the personage of not only the mullah, but also of the sheikh's nephew, nicknamed the Butcher. A few days later, Yorke is sketching when he stumbles upon Ayeda, the 16-year-old daughter of the sheikh, whom he decides to paint. He finds out she is still somehow unmarried, in stark contrast with how early the women of her people usually get married. For example, her 12-year-old friend had already been married for a year. It turns out she is betrothed to none other than the Butcher, a prospect she does not look forward to at all. Ayeda then explains how her tribe had been driven from their home by a rival tribe, and how her father had entered a mysterious gorge and came out days later, completely bereft of reason. When the Butcher sees them talking, he makes a big hullabaloo and demands Yorke to be punished. In the end, Aylward and company are accompanied by the Butcher as part of an escort to lead them away from the tribe, and along the way they espy the monastery whose existence the Beni Azaleh had vehemently denied before. As they approach, a face suddenly appears in a trap door above, and all the Beni Azaleh suddenly ride off, very excited. Entering the monastery, York and company find a warm welcome, as well as the Sheikh's missing son and heir Selim, who had since joined the monastery. The Englishmen don't get to enjoy much peace at the monastery, however, because the Beni Azaleh attack it, and eventually the party ends up entering the Valley of Madness, wherein Selim's father had lost his reason, as do all those who enter and look upon the sad, heart-wrenching form of Lot's wife, transformed into a pillar of stone for all eternity. An exciting book, much neglected, whose weird atmosphere is especially prevalent in the valley where men go insane, looking at the result of the senseless anger of their god.